Welcome to another edition of Would You Like to Chat? My guest today is Knoxville City Manager Aaron Adams. Thanks for stopping in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve.
Okay, so camping has been an issue, a sensitive issue in Knoxville for all the time I've been here. And it's been pretty quiet for several years. What kind of got this new discussion going?
Yeah, really, so this starts with a lot of folks approaching us as the city, trying to go through a permitting process and wanting to add camping spots. And when I say that, we have to be a little bit technical here, just for the sake of clarity, but folks really looking to make permanent camping spots. So that would include the full gamut with electric hookups, water and sewer hookups. And so people see the need in the community, obviously with the racetrack, that puts us in sort of a unique spot as a community. So we do have that demand for camping. And we certainly understand that as a city. And so historically what we've had is a loosening around the Nationals, that would be the 360s, the 410s, and the late model Nationals, allowing for some flexibility on things. So for example, if I'm a homeowner here in town and I have family, friends, or even just acquaintances who've gotten to know through the racing community, historically they've been able to come to my house, pull up into my yard or use my driveway and park their camper for 5 days or even 10 days or whatever it is. That's not changing. That's going to stay. We think that's an important part of the Nationals, allowing people to do that. We do understand the crunch for space and specifically for camping spaces. Then obviously we have the North Campgrounds, private, and one run by the racetrack. We have Marion County Park. So there are a lot of park options for camping, obviously around Lake Red Rock, lots of camping there too. And we know that those fill, and we know that the spillover happens into the city. So it's really not our intent. So basically anything you're doing today will continue to be okay going forward. What we're really seeing though is that demand to be adding permanent camper hookups and making a de facto campground in places where it's probably not appropriate. So for example, if I'm allowing, my uncle and a couple of friends, and so we've got 2 or 3 campers in my yard for those Nationals, that's allowed. What we're saying is that doesn't mean my front yard should become a campground or a campsite. So I probably shouldn't have permanent hookups in my front or backyard as a homeowner. That's specifically why we have zoning designations, so that I don't start a business out of my house, that I don't start a campground right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Again, we know Nationals, we know the demand for camping that's out there. We're not looking to change the way things work in those 10 days. It's more about the permanent infrastructure and hookups that we are seeing a real demand for people to install, and often in areas we don't think there's enough physical space, and right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So that's really the crux of the issue there, Steve.
Okay, yeah. When I was reading Bill Mattee's letter to the council, it seemed like with the timing of it, we're coming close on Nationals. Hopefully we get them. It seemed as though there's a concern about the number of people coming in town to camp for Nationals, but that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. And, language can be ambiguous. It's not our intent to dissuade or discourage people from coming to Nationals. We know that's a critical part. It's the character of Knoxville. And, that's true even for folks who may not be race fans. We know there are huge race fans here. We know there are folks who are not race fans, but I don't think you can live in Knoxville for long without having some level of acceptance with the races. And as a city, we certainly respect and, we appreciate the racetrack and the racing fans. So this is, not something we would want to perceive as an assault against them. Again, really what it comes down to is trying to preserve that feel of a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, without the feeling of it becoming a campground. We expect, whether it's this year, which we hope for, or maybe not till next year, but we expect Nationals to come back just the way it was, and to allow, again, I think maybe the simplest way I can say it is, if you're doing it today, you've done it in years past, you're going to be able to do it again going forward. The only thing that would change would be requests for people who currently don't have something but want to add something, they may be told no. But if it's something you've done historically, nothing's going to change for you.
But what about, because I know Marion County has made upgrades to their campgrounds, to accommodate the new campers that have all these features and bells and whistles that might require like the sewer and water hookups. Could that be why folks are looking to do that?
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure it makes the experience better for these folks during those 5 days, during those 10 days. I'm sure it provides, a higher quality of life for them. But that sort of, to us, feels like the trade-off. And so what we're specifically seeing are lots that are not especially large, asking for 3 hookups, 5 hookups, sometimes 10 or more hookups. Mm-hmm. And so that's really going to pack these people in very close together. Again, what we're trying to do is keep a high quality of life for the 50 weeks a year, not the 2. And so we feel it's important that somebody who buys a single family home in a residential neighborhood, they should have an expectation of certain things that will not happen, including living next to a campground. Yeah. It's just a level of expectation there. And so, again, we understand the nationals, the late model nationals. We understand how it's worked, and I think most people who would be buying real estate in town probably have a sense of how that works. So it's not our expectation to fundamentally change that. It's just about the day in, the day out, and turning essentially your front yard or maybe your backyard into a campsite. Just, we don't feel it's zoning-wise appropriate.
Playing devil's advocate here, say I've hosted, nationals campers for years. Yep. They have a new camper and they need all those things. I'm sure that there aren't people in town who are dependent upon the money they get from campers every year, but they just like having their friends around and they want to accommodate their friends. What do you have to say to people that might be in that situation?
I guess what I would say is, again, nothing has changed. So if your friends have been able to come in the years past, maybe they have to use the older model, maybe they have to make a different accommodation. Maybe they need to look at the North Campgrounds or Marion County Park, and I understand that might be unfortunate. I don't have an RV or a camper or any of those things, so I don't want to speak out of my depth on that. I don't have a level of sophistication. The way I understand it, that would be an instance that would be pretty few and far between, though. Yeah. Again, I'm dealing secondhand knowledge. My understanding is that those offer a period of time, and then you can do periodically, you can connect to the facilities you would need. So the way I understand it, that shouldn't be much of an issue, especially if you have a relationship with somebody. For water and sewer, hopefully you can maybe just use the home to get a shower, to use the bathroom, even drinking water and those things. So we hope it's not putting a lot of people out. Again, at the same time, we understand it can be difficult. We're just trying to strike what we think is a fair balance between a homeowner's right of not being next to a campground versus balancing, all the folks we know come for the races.
And so the ones that were specifically mentioned in Bill's letter, did you guys have a chance to go and look at those sites and kind of make a judgment, maybe we could rezone this to accommodate the property owner's request?
So with the proposal that's going forward, it actually puts a minimum stipulation of 5 acres. And so these folks would essentially be told no. I mean, again, this is where it sort of comes down to this idea of these requests and us, trying to do a due diligence, assessing these sites and saying, is this really fair to the adjoining property owners? And, to some extent, what do we want Knoxville to be? I've lived and worked in several different communities. As a race community, we stay in contact with other race communities. And I think we have a little bit of a unique wrinkle with the racetrack, physically being right in town. I'm not aware of any other communities that allow for campsites in the heart of their towns. It's for all the reasons that I just said, that quality of life that property owners, their expectation of when you buy property, that you're not buying next to a campground. And so that we just think that's critical. And so, the sites that Bill mentions in his memo, they would not be allowed to add additional hookups at this point.
It all goes back to that whole respect your neighbor thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And so we have the VA grounds coming available. Has there been discussion between the city and county about creating a new campground out there, or has any private investor approached you about building a new campground out there?
There's a lot of space. I think we all know that. I think there's possibly some opportunities. I'm going to use vague language here. I mean, there's still a long road to go down before anyone commits to anything. I think what's important here is Marion County has started into a process with Confluence. This is a planning group based in the Des Moines Metro, and they're working through a process, and so they're going to run some of those assessments, the viability, if, where, when, how, all those things. And so there's still a lot to be figured out. What I do know is that's over 150 acres of ground, very close to the racetrack. So there may be some opportunities, and it might be housing of a different variety too. There's nothing to say that it has to be camping. It could be a hotel. It could be anything. I mean, I don't have any specific information at this point of something that will happen. I just think there's a lot of discussions that can still happen before everything is said and done.
Yeah, I was thinking the proximity to the track that, obviously we don't need the whole thing to be a campground, because Marion County as a whole, we already have more campsites. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a lot.
yeah, absolutely. But like I say, with that much acreage, there's potential for a lot of different uses out there. Yeah.
So, as far as your everyday person, who, like I say, just has their friends come in town and stay with them through the nationals, because I know they've built relationships over the years. Countless people I've talked to over the years say that they're going to be fine, right? Welcoming their friends back. Okay.
Yep, 100%. Yep, for sure. I mean, we understand those relationships, and I think you're exactly right, Steve. For a lot of people, this is more than just the race event. This is a friendship. This is seeing friends you don't see, but maybe the once or twice a year.
Exactly.
And so, the last thing we want to do is, first of all, cause the logistical nightmare of saying no more doing that. But second of all, to break up those relationships. Again, I mean, as a city, and I don't want to beat the dead horse here, but we're really trying to strike a balance that we think is fair to accommodate for races and race fans, but at the same time preserving those property rights of individuals.
And so how'd you arrive at that 5-acre number?
So we've talked to a lot of different communities. Again, some of them racing communities, communities in general, Iowa communities, other states. And, we've tried to strike a balance. And 5 acres is just a number that's come up. We think what it allows for would be your more traditional campgrounds, allowing space to get a volume of number both of campers, but also those things that I think people expect as amenities to a campground, which would be maybe common bathroom, shower house type facilities, things of that nature. Once you start getting below 5 acres, it becomes more difficult to fit in the volume of campers, to provide, again, those amenities. And so it just seems to be a common number, and one that we think provides the space to do it, and do it effectively.
And would additional water and sewer hookups to the city's main lines, would that increase the burden on those systems, even if it's for just 2 weeks a year? Or would our infrastructure be negatively impacted by having those?
I guess it's possible. I mean, obviously they are going to be using water and sewer facilities. We have those capabilities. So for me, I'm going to say probably for the rest of my working career, we don't foresee an issue there. We have capacity that we could handle that. And we have those long-term plans for Knoxville to grow. So whether that would be the addition of another campsite or a subdivision, so we have the ability to absorb something like that.
Okay, but is there anything more you want to add about this issue? I think we've covered pretty much everything, unless there are other issues that have been brought to your attention that you want to address.
No, I mean, I think, again, I appreciate, Steve, the opportunity to talk to you about it. And again, at the risk of repeating myself, the big takeaway I would want people to have here is, if there's something you've been doing, if you've built up one of these relationships and you've had folks in your yard for these big events, that's not going to change. We don't want to touch that. We don't want to cause the nightmares that would come with. If you've been doing something for the last several years, you're going to be able to continue doing that, even under the new code. Really what it is about controlling where future infrastructure would go for camping.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time, Aaron, and I hope this has helped everybody. Thanks you for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate it, Steve.
Have a good day.